Everyone watched as the police officer raised his boot to kick the helpless dog. But no one imagined what would happen next. That single cruel kick started a chain of events that would break hearts, teach a powerful lesson, and change lives forever. It was a cold and gray afternoon. Dark clouds covered the sky, and a light drizzle made the empty streets glisten with sadness. People hurried past, holding umbrellas, their faces hidden, avoiding the cold wind. But in one forgotten corner of the street, beside a rusted garbage bin, sat a small, skinny dog. His fur was dirty and wet, clinging to his frail bones. His ribs poked out from his sides, and his eyes, oh, those eyes, were large, round, and filled with silent pain. He wasn't barking. He wasn't growling. He was simply sitting there, shivering, with his head lowered, as if life had already given up on him. Every few seconds, he would glance up, hopeful, whenever footsteps passed by. Maybe this person would help. Maybe someone would notice his suffering. But no one did. Then came Officer Ryan. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing his polished boots and dark uniform. People in town respected him, or perhaps feared him. But today, his heart seemed colder than the winter air. His eyes landed on the dog with disgust, not compassion. "Filthy mutt," he muttered under his breath. Without a moment's hesitation, Ryan lifted his heavy boot and, with a force that shocked even the few bystanders, kicked the helpless dog. The sound was sickening. A loud yelp echoed through the street as the dog's small body was thrown against the garbage can. The metal clanged loudly as if protesting the cruelty. Inside a nearby shop, a young boy named Sam witnessed everything through the window. His heart froze. His eyes widened in horror as he saw the dog collapse, whimpering in pain. He ran out of the shop, his tiny feet splashing through puddles, and shouted with all his might, "Stop! Please, stop!" But the officer had already turned away, his face blank, as if kicking a living being was nothing more than stepping on a piece of trash. The dog lay there, trembling, trying to stand up on his shaky legs but failing. His whimpers were soft, but they cut through the heart like a knife. Passers-by slowed down but kept their distance. Some took out their phones to record, others whispered to each other, but no one moved to help. Only Sam stood by the dog, his small hands clenched into fists, tears of anger and helplessness mixing with the rain on his face. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how. He was just a child. But in his heart, a fire had started, a fire of kindness, stronger than all the coldness around him. Above them, a small security camera quietly recorded everything. The kick. The fall. The cries. The indifference. That single moment of cruelty was not just an act of violence. It was the beginning of a story that would soon shake the entire town and teach a lesson no one would forget. That night, the video of the cruel kick spread like wildfire across social media. Within hours, thousands of people had seen it. The image of the small, helpless dog being kicked mercilessly by a police officer ignited a wave of anger, sadness, and shame. People couldn't believe that such brutality had come from someone meant to protect the weak. Comments flooded in. "Heartless monster. Justice for the dog. How can a human be this cruel?" But while the internet roared with outrage, in a small, broken home on the edge of town, a little boy named Sam was quietly wiping his tears. He couldn't get the dog's whimper out of his mind. The image of the fragile body being thrown like trash haunted him. He knew he had to find that dog. He had to help. Despite the cold rain, Sam put on his thin, worn-out jacket, grabbed an old flashlight, and slipped out into the night. His family didn't have much, their house was small, the roof leaked when it rained, and their meals were simple. But Sam had something more valuable than riches, a heart full of kindness. The streets were empty and wet. Every shadow made Sam's heart beat faster. He searched under cars, behind garbage bins, calling softly, "Here, boy, where are you? Please come out." But there was no sign of the dog. For hours, Sam walked, his small shoes soaked, his fingers numb. Just as hopelessness began to creep in, he heard it, a faint, shaky whimper coming from beneath an old, rusty car. He crouched down, shining his flashlight, and there he was. The dog was curled up tightly, trying to disappear from the cruel world. His fur was matted with mud and blood, his body trembling uncontrollably. His eyes were barely open, but when they met Sam's, something changed. There was a flicker of trust, a silent cry for help. "Hey, buddy. I found you," Sam whispered, his voice trembling. Slowly, carefully, he crawled under the car, ignoring the cold, ignoring the dirt. With the gentleness of a mother's touch, he lifted the fragile dog into his arms. The dog didn't struggle. He was too weak, too tired to fight. Sam wrapped him in his jacket, holding him close to his chest. "You're safe now. I promise." His tears mixed with the rain as he walked back home, carrying the little soul who had been hurt so badly. At home, his mother's eyes widened in shock, but she didn't scold him. She fetched an old blanket, some warm water, and together, they cleaned the dog's wounds. They had little to give, but they gave everything they could. Sam named the dog Buddy. That night, Buddy slept curled up beside Sam, wrapped in the warmth of the boy's love. Every now and then, Buddy whimpered in his sleep, reliving the nightmare of the cruel kick. But Sam was there, gently stroking his head, whispering, "It's okay, Buddy. You're safe. I'm here." In a world where cruelty had been so easy, a small boy's kindness became a powerful light in the darkness. The next morning, Officer Ryan sat alone in his kitchen, staring into a cup of cold, untouched coffee. His house, once filled with pride and honor, now felt like a prison. His phone had not stopped buzzing all night, messages, calls, hateful comments. The video of him kicking that helpless dog had gone viral. His face was everywhere. Headlines screamed. "Police officer abuses stray dog, public outrage. Shame on our protectors. Justice for Buddy." Ryan had always considered himself a strong man. He believed discipline required toughness. But this? This was something else. He had never imagined the world would see him like this, a villain, a bully, a heartless man. But what hurt more than the public anger was the memory of that dog's eyes. He couldn't forget them. They weren't angry. They weren't wild. They were just, sad. Full of silent pleading. Full of questions. Why, they seemed to ask. That simple, haunting why echoed in his mind. He tried to shake it off. "It's just a dog," he whispered to himself. But the words felt wrong now. Deep inside, something was shifting. For the first time in years, Ryan remembered his own childhood. He had been just like Buddy. A lonely, scared boy with no one to stand up for him. His father was a harsh, unforgiving man. Every mistake, no matter how small, was met with fists, belts, and cruel words. He had learned early that showing weakness invited more pain. So he built walls around his heart, taught himself to be tough, to feel nothing. But seeing that video, hearing the town's outrage, Ryan realized something horrifying. He had become the very person he once feared. That evening, as the sun set in a dull, gray sky, Ryan made a choice. He took off his uniform and drove to Sam's house. His heart pounded. He didn't know what he would say. Could an apology erase what he had done? Probably not. But he had to try. When he reached Sam's small home, the boy was sitting outside on the steps, with Buddy lying beside him. The dog looked better, cleaner, bandaged, but still fragile. The moment Buddy saw Ryan, his body stiffened. His ears dropped. His tail tucked between his legs. Slowly, he backed away, hiding behind Sam. That single moment shattered Ryan. He had faced criminals, stood firm against threats, but now, the fear in that tiny dog's eyes made his throat tighten and his vision blur. "I'm sorry," Ryan whispered, his voice cracking. "I don't deserve forgiveness. But I want to change." Sam didn't say much. He just looked at Ryan with his big, honest eyes that had witnessed cruelty, but still believed in kindness. Ryan knew it would take time. Maybe Buddy would never trust him. Maybe the town would never forgive him. But that day, standing in front of a small boy and a wounded dog, Officer Ryan felt something he hadn't felt in years. Remorse. Real, deep, painful remorse. And sometimes, that's where healing begins. Days passed, but the weight of that cruel moment stayed heavy on Officer Ryan's heart. Each night, he lay awake, haunted by the image of Buddy's fragile body flying through the air, the sharp yelp of pain, the boy's desperate scream. Every news article, every angry comment was a mirror reflecting his shame. But while the world pointed fingers, Ryan chose not to hide. Instead, he started visiting Sam's neighborhood quietly. He didn't wear his uniform anymore. He didn't carry his badge. He came as a man who had failed, and wanted to change. He began with small acts of kindness. One morning, Sam noticed Ryan leaving a bag of dog food near their door. The next day, a soft blanket. Then, a small kennel, built with his own hands. No words. No pride. Just silent steps toward redemption. At first, Buddy would bark and hide whenever Ryan appeared. His little body would shake, his tail tucked tightly. Ryan never forced it. He kept his distance, sitting on the sidewalk, letting Buddy watch him from the safety of Sam's arms. Every day, Ryan would simply sit there, sometimes bringing treats, sometimes bringing nothing but his quiet presence. Days turned into weeks. Slowly, very slowly, Buddy's fear softened. His ears perked up when he saw Ryan. His trembling stopped. The anger faded, replaced by curiosity. One afternoon, something miraculous happened. Ryan was sitting as usual, with his hands resting calmly on his knees, when Buddy, ever so carefully, took a few shaky steps toward him. Sam held his breath. Ryan didn't move. His heart was pounding, but he remained still, giving Buddy the choice. Buddy sniffed the air, inching closer, his eyes still cautious but less afraid. Then, in a moment that seemed to stop time, Buddy gently pressed his small, scarred head against Ryan's hand. Tears welled up in Ryan's eyes. With the softest touch, he ran his fingers over Buddy's fur, careful not to scare him. The dog didn't pull away. He stayed, accepting the gesture. It wasn't just a touch. It was forgiveness. A silent, powerful message: "You hurt me. But I'm giving you a chance to be better." Sam smiled, his heart full of pride. In that simple moment, a cruel officer and a wounded dog taught everyone watching a lesson far greater than any law. From that day on, Ryan dedicated himself to helping stray animals. He started volunteering at the local shelter, rescuing dogs, feeding strays, and educating others about kindness. The town that once hated him began to see a different side, a man not defined by his worst mistake, but by his honest effort to make it right. But more importantly, Buddy had found not just a savior in Sam, but a strange, unexpected friend in the very man who once hurt him. Kindness had built a bridge over cruelty. A small boy's compassion, a dog's forgiving heart, and a man's deep regret. Together, they created a story of healing that no one in town would ever forget. Months passed. Buddy's little body slowly healed from the physical wounds, but the scars inside him were deeper. Yet, he never let his pain define him. Wherever Sam went, Buddy followed. His tail wagged, his ears perked up, and his eyes, once filled with fear, began to shine with trust again. The town loved Buddy. People who once ignored stray dogs would stop to pet him. Children would bring him treats. For a little dog who had once been treated like trash, Buddy had now become a symbol of hope and kindness. Even Officer Ryan would often walk beside Sam and Buddy, learning, growing, and giving back. But time can be cruel. One cold morning, Sam noticed Buddy wasn't his usual happy self. He didn't jump up. He didn't wag his tail. He just lay there, breathing heavily, his little chest rising and falling with difficulty. His eyes, though still gentle, seemed tired. Very tired. Sam's heart sank. He rushed Buddy to the vet. Officer Ryan was there, too, holding Sam's hand tightly. But the vet's face said it all. The months of injuries, infections, and Buddy's frail body had taken their toll. His heart is too weak now, the vet said softly. He doesn't have much time. Those words shattered Sam's heart. He took Buddy home, wrapped him in his favorite blanket, and lay beside him. He whispered stories, sang songs, and thanked him for being his best friend. Officer Ryan sat quietly, his eyes wet, gently stroking Buddy's head. The little warrior who had suffered so much, was getting ready to rest. That evening, as the golden sunset painted the sky, Buddy took his final breath. Peacefully. In the arms of the boy who loved him. His small, tired body finally found the rest it deserved. The town mourned. People gathered to say goodbye. Flowers were laid, candles were lit. Buddy was buried under a large tree, a place where he had once loved to sit and watch the world go by. Officer Ryan, the man who had once caused so much pain, stood beside Sam, unable to hold back his tears. He placed a small sign at Buddy's grave. It read, "Here lies Buddy, the dog who taught us kindness." For Sam, losing Buddy was like losing a piece of his heart. But he knew Buddy's story would live on. Schools began teaching about animal kindness. Stray dogs in the town were no longer ignored. A small shelter was opened, named Buddy's Home. Officer Ryan dedicated his life to protecting those without a voice. He often said, "Buddy forgave me when no one else did. I owe him everything." In the end, a small, fragile dog had changed an entire town. With his silent courage, his forgiving heart, and the love of a little boy, Buddy had left behind a legacy far bigger than himself. He came into this world unwanted, but he left as a hero. One act of cruelty can destroy, but one act of kindness can heal many hearts. Forgiveness is powerful, and sometimes, it comes from the ones you hurt the most. If you saw an animal in pain, would you walk away, or would you be the one to help? Tell us your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters. Thanks for watching full video. If Buddy's story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe for more emotional and true animal stories. Your small action can spread kindness. Thanks for watching.